Welcome to James and Elena's English Chat, the podcast where we learn English together, one conversation at a time, right here in our cozy little studio. How are you doing today, Elena? You look very comfortable with that giant mug of tea.
Oh, I am, James. I've got my favorite woolly socks on, and I'm ready to chat. Today, we are diving into a topic that touches everyone, even if we don't like to admit it: money. Specifically, money personalities and budgeting.
Money. It's a bit of a scary topic for me, to be honest. I usually just look at my bank account and close my eyes. But before we get into my financial disasters, we should remind our listeners about the level today.
Exactly. This episode is designed for B1 and B2, or intermediate level learners. If you don't catch every single word, please don't worry. That is totally normal. Just relax, enjoy the vibe, and try to pick up the main ideas. You're doing great just by being here.
I feel you. When I was learning French, I used to panic if I missed one word. Don't be like me. Just listen to the flow. So, Elena, what's the plan for today's episode? What's the roadmap?
Well, first, we're going to talk about our own real-life money habits. The good, the bad, and the why did I buy that? While we chat, I want you to listen for how we use phrasal verbs related to spending. Then we'll talk about different money personalities. And finally, we will end with Elena's Vocabulary Corner, where I'll explain the best phrases from today's chat so you can use them yourself.
I'm really looking forward to the vocabulary corner. I need all the help I can get. But before we start the stories, I have a tiny favor to ask our listeners. If you enjoy learning with us every week, please take a second to like and subscribe. It's a small thing, but it really helps us keep making these free episodes for everyone.
It really does help, so thank you. Now, James, I saw you looking at your phone earlier and sighing very loudly. Is everything okay with your budget this week?
Oh, Elena, it's a disaster. I tried to set aside some money for a new pair of running shoes. I really did. But then I went into that little shop on the corner. You know the one? They have all those weird gadgets.
I know it. It's dangerous in there.
Exactly. I went in for a light bulb and I ended up having to fork out 50 pounds for a self-stirring coffee mug. I don't even need it. My hand works perfectly fine for stirring. I just blow through my savings so fast. How about you, listener? Do you do this too? Do you buy things you don't need the moment you see them?
A self-stirring mug? James, that is classic. It's so hard to keep track of spending when everything looks so shiny and useful in the moment. I have my own failures too, though. I spent way too much on rare flower seeds last weekend. My husband, Mark, he's the organized one, just shook his head when the delivery arrived.
See, even the teacher has a money fail. It makes me feel much better. Let's talk more about why we do this and how we can stop running out of money before the end of the month.
We're only human, James. Don't be too hard on yourself about the mug. But honestly, it makes me wonder. I think our habits start much earlier than we realize. I was thinking about my childhood the other day, and I remember my very first bank.
Oh? Was it one of those classic pink ceramic pigs? I think I had one of those, but it was usually empty or filled with buttons instead of coins.
Almost. It was actually a large glass jam jar. I was obsessed with it. Every time I got a bit of pocket money for helping my neighbor, Mrs. Gable, she's our elderly neighbor who always has an eye on the street, I would run home and drop the coins in. I loved the clink sound it made. I would sit on my floor for hours just to count the coins and see how much I could save up.
You actually enjoyed counting them? That sounds like homework. I was the complete opposite. I didn't have a jar. I had what my mom called hot pockets. The second I got my allowance, I would dash off to the corner shop. I couldn't wait even 5 minutes.
Let me guess, you didn't exactly put aside any of that money for a rainy day, did you?
Not a chance. I would blow the whole lot on those fizzy cola bottles and chocolate bars. I wanted that sugar rush immediately. By Sunday morning, I was always broke again. I just couldn't hold back. It's like the money was burning a hole in my pocket. Do you know that expression, Elena?
Exactly. It's a great idiom. If money is burning a hole in your pocket, you feel a very strong urge to spend it right away. It's funny because I was so careful. I would look at a toy in a shop window for weeks before I would finally decide to splash out and buy it. I needed to be 100% sure it was worth my hard-earned coins.
I wish I had your discipline. Even now, I feel like I'm still that kid in the candy shop, just with bigger toys, like self-stirring mugs. How about you, listener? Were you like Elena, counting every penny in a glass jar? Or were you like me, running to the shop the moment you had some cash? It's interesting to think if you're still the same way now.
I feel you, James. It's hard to change those early settings. For me, the jar represented safety. If I had my pile of coins, I knew I could handle anything. But I also missed out on a lot of fun because I was too afraid to spend anything at all. Sometimes you need to live a little.
Well, I definitely did the living a little part, but then I had to power through the rest of the week with no snacks. It's all about balance, I suppose. But why is it so hard to find that middle ground?
That is the big question. We learn these patterns so young. Now that we're adults, we have to deal with bills and rent, and those old habits can really get in the way if we aren't careful.
You're not wrong, Alina. Adulting is basically just paying for electricity and insurance until you die. But it's the fun stuff that really tests my willpower. For me, that's always travel. I'm a total disaster when it comes to holiday budgets.
I can imagine. You're the kind of person who sees a beautiful beach on Instagram and books a flight 5 minutes later, aren't you?
Exactly. It happened a couple of years ago. I heard about this incredible music festival in the mountains. It was starting on Friday, and I found out about it on Wednesday. I didn't even check my bank balance, Elena. I just felt I had to go.
Oh dear, last-minute tickets and flights, that must have been expensive.
It cost an arm and a leg. I had to shell out almost my entire month's rent just for the travel and the pass. I knew it was a bad idea financially, but I just wanted to live for the moment. I spent the whole weekend sleeping in a tiny tent and eating cold beans, but the music was amazing.
I see the appeal. There is a certain magic in being spontaneous. But I'm the complete opposite. For me, the fun actually starts with the research.
Research? Elena, you're making a holiday sound like a school project. Why does that make you happy?
I feel you. It sounds boring to some people, but I love to shop around for the best deals. Last summer, I wanted to go to the coast. Instead of booking the first big hotel I saw, I spent hours looking through tiny guest houses and boutique hotels. I finally found this beautiful place with a garden full of lemon trees.
And let me guess, it was a bargain?
It was. It was half the price of the big resorts. When I finally arrived and sat in that garden with my book, I felt so satisfied. My patience really paid off because I had a luxury experience without the luxury price tag. I love that feeling of winning against the system.
I admire that. I really do. When I get to a hotel, I usually realize I've forgotten something important, like a toothbrush, and I have to buy an expensive one in the lobby. I never look forward to checking my credit card statement after a trip.
How about you, listener? Are you a James or an Elena when you travel? Do you love to splash out on a spontaneous adventure? Or do you prefer the quiet joy of finding a hidden gem at a great price? It's a real tug of war between our hearts and our wallets, isn't it?
It really is. I think I need to learn to wind down my impulsive side. Maybe next time I want to go to a festival, I'll call you first and you can find me a budget guest house nearby.
I would be happy to help. But James, I don't think I can help you with your self-stirring coffee mugs. That is a whole different problem.
Hey, that mug is a technological marvel, even if it did cost way too much. But you're right, it's all about priorities. I value the experience of the music, and you value the peace of a well-planned escape.
A marvel, you say. If you say so, James. If that self-stirring mug makes your morning coffee better, then maybe it was worth it. We all have those little things that make life feel a bit easier, even if they are a bit silly.
Exactly. It's the small joys. But it makes me wonder about everyone else. We've been sharing our secrets, but we haven't asked the most important people here. How about you, listener? What kind of spender are you?
That's a great question. Do you consider yourself a saver who thinks twice about every penny? Or are you more like James, living for the moment? There's no right or wrong answer, really. It's just about understanding your own style and what makes you feel comfortable.
I think I'm what you'd call a daily habitual spender. You know, those small things that don't seem like much at the time, like my morning latte at the Rusty Spoon, my local coffee shop. Mike, the barista there, usually starts making my order the moment he sees me walk in. It only costs a few pounds, so I don't really think about it.
But those little costs can really chip away at your bank account over a month, can't they? People often call it the latte factor. If you spend £5 every morning, by the end of the year, that could have been a whole holiday. How about you, listener? Do you have a daily habit like that? Maybe it's a snack, a magazine, or even a small purchase in a mobile game.
Ouch, please don't do the math, Elena. It hurts my head. But you're right, it's the hidden spending. And then there's the online shopping. I'll be sitting on my sofa, perfectly happy, and then I stumble upon a flash sale for something I didn't even know existed. 10 minutes later, I've clicked buy without thinking.
I feel you. It's so easy to give in when a website says only 2 items left or sale ends in 1 hour. I do that with books. My cat, Whiskers, he's a very grumpy orange tabby, usually watches me from the bookshelf with a judgmental look when a new package arrives. He knows I haven't finished the last 3 books I bought.
See, even Elena has a weakness. It's actually quite a relief to hear that. I think many of our listeners probably feel the same way. There's so much pressure to be perfect with money and to keep track of every single cent.
Absolutely. But the goal isn't to be a robot. It's just to keep an eye on where the money is going so you don't have a nasty surprise at the end of the month. If you love your morning coffee, keep it. Just maybe don't buy the self-stirring mug and the coffee in the same week.
Fair point. A big purchase like that can really set me back if I'm not careful. I guess it's about finding what actually makes you happy versus what you're just buying because you're bored or tired. What do you think, listener? Is there something you buy every day that you just couldn't live without? Or are you the type who can walk past a 70% off sign without even looking? We've covered a lot today, haven't we? From my disastrous coffee mugs to your beautiful lemon trees. I think it helps to have a map to navigate these kinds of conversations. If our listeners want to talk about their own money habits, I have a few sentence starters that really help me.
I love that idea, James. Having a framework makes speaking feel much safer. What's your first one?
Well, I always start with, I have a tendency to blank. For me, it would be, I have a tendency to spend money on gadgets. It sounds a bit more natural than just saying, I buy gadgets. Another good one is, when it comes to my finances, I prefer to blank. You could say you prefer to save, or you prefer to live in the moment.
Exactly. And for those of us who find themselves in the shop without knowing why, you can say, I often find myself looking at travel websites when I'm bored. It explains a pattern of behavior.
I use those all the time. But Alina, before we finish, I really need you to explain some of those phrases we used today. I think I used a few idioms, and I'm not 100% sure I explained them well.
You did great, James. But let's dive into Elena's vocabulary corner to make sure everyone is on the same page. I've picked 5 phrases from our chat today. Are you ready?
Ready as I'll ever be. Let's do it.
The first one is to set aside. To set aside. This means to keep some money or time for a specific purpose in the future. It's like putting it in a special box so you don't touch it.
I tried to set aside 50 pounds for my new shoes, but the self-stirring mug was just too tempting.
My husband Mark and I set aside a little bit of money every month so we can take a nice trip in the summer.
That sounds much more responsible than my plan. What's next?
Next is to fork out. To fork out. This is an informal way to say you are paying for something, usually when it's expensive and you aren't very happy about it.
I had to fork out a lot of money to fix my car last month after I hit a giant pothole.
I really didn't want to fork out 40 pounds for a new umbrella, but the rain was just too heavy to walk home.
I feel you. I hate forking out for umbrellas. They always break. What's the third one?
This one describes you perfectly, James. To blow through. To blow through. This means to spend all your money very quickly, like a strong wind blowing everything away.
I usually blow through my birthday money within the first 2 days of receiving it.
If we aren't careful with our holiday budget, we will blow through all our cash before the second week starts.
Guilty as charged. Okay, give me something a bit more positive.
How about to shop around? To shop around. This means to visit different shops or websites to compare prices before you buy something. It's the secret to finding a bargain.
My brother always tells me to shop around for insurance, but I usually just pick the first one I see.
I spent all morning shopping around for a new laptop until I finally found a great discount online.
I need to start doing that. And the last one?
The last one is to chip away at. To chip away at. This means to gradually reduce something over time in small amounts. We used it to talk about how small costs can reduce your savings.
Buying a takeaway every night really started to chip away at the money I saved for a new bike.
If you just save $10 a week, you can slowly chip away at your student debt until it's gone.
Those are fantastic, Elena. To chip away at is such a visual phrase. It makes me think of a little hammer hitting a big rock. How about you, listener? Can you use one of these phrases to describe your week? Did you have to fork out for something unexpected, or are you trying to set aside some money for a treat? I'm really glad we could wind down today's episode with such a helpful list. Talking about money always makes me feel a bit nervous, but this has actually been quite fun.
I feel you, James. It can be a heavy topic, but sometimes we just have to power through the difficult conversations to really learn something new. You did great today.
Thanks, Elena. But before we finish, I think I need a map. A summary of how to actually use what we learned when I'm out there in the real world.
That is a wonderful idea. Let's look at 2 idioms we used earlier. First, burning a hole in your pocket. If you have money burning a hole in your pocket, it means you have a very strong urge to spend it immediately. You just can't wait.
That's me at the gadget shop. And the opposite of that would be saving for a rainy day, right?
Exactly. Saving for a rainy day means putting money aside for the future, especially for a time when you might really need it unexpectedly. It's about being prepared.
I'm working on it. My wife, Emily, she's the organized nurse in our house, is always reminding me to do that. So, listeners, if you want to practice your English and talk about your own habits, here are 3 sentence starters for you.
Number 1, I have a tendency to... Use this to talk about a habit, like, I have a tendency to shop around for hours before buying anything.
Number 2, I am trying to set aside money for... This is great for your goals, like, I am trying to set aside money for a new laptop.
And number 3, my biggest guilty pleasure purchase was... A guilty pleasure is something you love, but you know is a bit silly or expensive.
That brings us to our weekly challenge. We want to hear from you in the comments. How about you, listener? What was your biggest guilty pleasure purchase recently? Did you fork out for a fancy dinner, or maybe a self-stirring mug like mine?
I can't wait to read those. It's so much fun to see how everyone spends their fun money. Thank you all for joining us today in our cozy little studio. It's been a joy.
It really has. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this chat. It really helps us keep making these episodes for you. We'll be back next week with more English, more stories, and probably more of my mistakes.
We wouldn't have it any other way, James. Take care of yourselves, everyone, and happy learning.
Bye, everyone. See you next time.